Leeds United 2, Derby nil. I'm Michael. I'm joined by Craig as always, and we've got a special guest from Sky Sports, Simeon. How we doing, mate?
I'm very well, mate. Thank you. It's great to be here as well. Real pleasure to join you guys after a monumental win against Derby County, shall we say?
Yes, this was an easy win, wasn't it? Craig, how you doing,
Mm.
mate?
I'm doing good after today. A lot better than I have been in recent weeks.
Yeah, your normal prediction came in, didn't it? I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that Joe Rodon scored for a start was just amazing, and then top it up, Verba scores. Whoever predicted that, gold star for you guys. Craig, what do you think about our performance as a whole?
Back to standard ways, basics really. Standard home game, controlling things. Yeah, well, I think it's just sometimes teams come to us and don't offer anything. I mean, it looked like they tried to have a go, but yeah, I don't know if the wind played a part in a lot of that and the weather. But you know, we took control of the game, and after that first goal went in, I think there weren't much coming back. It opened it up more, and then it just allows Leeds to play the game. And yeah, of course, Rodon scoring his first goal was the highlight for me.
25th Welsh player to score for Leeds United while we're talking about stats. Simeon, what do you think about the match?
I thought you were just about to ask me the other 24.
No,
No, yeah,
no, we're not doing that yet.
no. I mean, it was comfortable, wasn't it? I mean, you saw with the conditions and with the way Derby set up and the team Derby are, you would have thought if anyone was going to cause trouble from a set piece on the day, it would be Derby, wouldn't it? But it just you were so dominant from start to finish, realistically, and it was Derby didn't really offer very much. They clearly came to sit in, and I imagine their gaffer Paul Warren will be very frustrated with how they conceded in the end. But I mean, it was from a neutral perspective, it was never in doubt, really. From before he scored the first goal, it was pretty clear that it was going to be a home win. And I know it's not always, I imagine, straightforward and obvious as that when you're watching it from your perspective. But from my perspective, watching it, it was very clear who was going to win that game from pretty much the word go, to be honest.
Yeah, obviously you're neutral in this, and like you said, when we score first, we don't lose. Obviously, Farker, 33 games. Every time we scored first, we won 30, drawn 3, scored 75, and conceded 10. 25 clean sheets that time. It just shows when we get the lead, how we don't just sit back. Though it's not like we score a goal, we sit back. I mean, we had got more shots in the second half than we did the first half, and there's been a lot of narrative around Leeds that when we first score or the second half tends to be a lot more boring. We just pass it around and stuff. But this game was just complete flip side of that. Craig, what did you think of it? Because I know you and me have had the discussion a lot how we tend to sit back when we've scored.
Yeah, well, for me, it's all about it's just controlling the game. Like when teams sit in and just allow us. Like, I mean, I listened to Farker's press conference after where he spoke about this. That what do you want him to do? Like, if you let them have the ball and come to you, and then try to hit him on the counter attack, he says, but why do that when you risk conceding, or you risk a chance or a free kick or something where you can just control the game. And yeah, I mean, I'm not against it because I think it's a good way to be. But after about the 70th minute when he made the subs today, I said that it's just gonna like the attacking from impetus from us died down a little. I mean, the
It
subs that
did
we
when
brought on
Solomon
were
came
like,
off. Between when Solomon came off and when Solomon came off and Ramazani came on a little bit later on, then we dictated the play. Ramazani was a lot more direct. He wanted that. He pushed forward every time he had the ball,
yeah,
which we were slightly missing
yeah.
when Ramazani came off. When
Ramazani
Solomon came
made
off,
it. Yeah, I think when Ramazani came on, the impetus came back. Like we were attacking a bit more, but I think taking Solomon off took away that directness from us. Because I don't think Nonto plays the same way, and it kind of like slows the game. It slows the game down a lot.
yeah. What did you think, Simon? Because we're very hit and miss with our strikers with how we feel about our forward line. What do you make with them? And like, obviously, we've had people in the past say Nonto's our standout guy, and like, what's your thoughts from a neutral point of view? Because obviously, you're a supporter of neither club.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Nonto is on his best day probably one of the standout players in the championship. He hasn't quite hit those levels maybe in the last few weeks and potentially all season in terms of maybe what people quite would have thought. And I think a lot of people were maybe expecting him to just step straight into what Somerville did last season, but Somerville is a bit older. And I think people do forget that Nonto is still very, very young and he is still very, very inexperienced. He's only just turned 21. He's still going to have those games where he dips in and out and he has to be kind of managed and taken out of the firing line. And I think Farker is doing that. And because you have got other options, you have got the opportunity to do that. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't always have to. I know it could be so easy to be like, all right, this is our guy and this isn't our guy, and just flip between that all the time in terms of who your man. And I know it happens all the time. You kind of see it from an outside perspective. A striker goes on a good run and suddenly he's the best thing you have, and then someone else comes in and then suddenly he's the best thing you have. But for me, it's just a case of managing them, and it's another 3-game week. December's such a hectic time, and I just think it is a case of not stressing out every time someone is or isn't in the starting lineup, because Farker has done this before. He's managed this before and he knows what he's doing in terms of getting through this period. And I think it is important that he does keep doing this and not worry too much about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think especially with our bench today, it was like one of the strongest. If, in my opinion, it's definitely the strongest the championship's probably ever seen. The fact that we brought on Verba, who's an international, and yeah, he scores for us. He also got the most shots in the game out of both clubs. He got 4 shots away. You've got Nonto on the bench. You've got Joseph on the bench, Ramazani, Kanavagu, and that's not even including Bamford, Joseph, and even Ampadu. When you've got that bench, obviously we see it, we think, wow, how do you see it from like your point of view?
It's really it's just it is very impressive, especially the wide options. I mean, most of your wingers, all of your wingers would probably start for pretty much every other team in the championship. It's hard to think of any particular, maybe Doak at Middlesbrough, but other than that, I don't see any of the 4 or 5 you have not getting very, very irregular game time at every other team, realistically. And we were talking about this a bit before we started, where we said that your starting 11 last season was probably better than the starting 11 you have this season. But in terms of options off the bench, it's just like it's night and day. And it should really, you should kind of embrace that and enjoy that you do have those options and those opportunities to change the game and play a different way using certain wingers when you do need someone more direct or you do need someone a little bit tricky. You have those opportunities to do that. And I think Farker is getting better at embracing and using that, whereas I know he's been accused in the past of being very kind of rigid in the kind of the 11 he picks and the side he has, but now he does have those options which he maybe hasn't had before, and those chances to change the game and shape it in a way he is slowly maybe getting better at it. And I know it's easy to say that after you've just won, whereas I'm sure if we were talking about after the Blackburn game last week, we'd be having a very different conversation about the same thing. But it is, for me personally, it is a case of, as all those players are coming back to fitness, it's just using them all in the right way against the right opponents, really.
Yeah, adaptability comes into it as well, right? We've seen it. Obviously, Firpo playing his 100th game today. Unfortunately, he pulled a hamstring, so he's out now for next game. We know that for a fact. Verba comes on. Obviously, you got Verba, you got Smith. Byram, obviously, he's injured at the moment. So we still got options at left back as well. So for me, I'm a big fan of Firpo. I would have loved for him to play the whole game. Would it have changed the scoreline? Who knows? It's all these if, buts, and maybes. But we'll touch on Verba a little bit. Craig, what did you think about his performance today? Because I know you're hit and miss with him, because obviously the whole thing last summer, and how you feel about him in particular.
Yeah, I mean, from a, like you say, we take emotion out of it, and you know what it looked like from a fan's point of view, the way that it played out, because we don't know what happened in the background, do we? So, but the way that you see it like that, taking that away, he played well today. He played really well. Like, if he was coming into, like, he's took his chance basically. That Firpo's got injured, he's took his chance, you know, to stake a claim for starting maybe the next few games, and if he carries on the way that he did today, you might say, does Firpo have a challenger then to get back into the side? And for me, because I'm a Firpo fan as well, it's a shame that Verba comes on and takes Firpo's place and then scores a goal, and we've been dying for Firpo to score a goal for for so long. But yeah, he does it in his first game. But yeah, overall played well.
Yeah, I mean, he was furthest forward person a lot of the time. Obviously, that's how we play. Sit back with two centre backs, one of the mids drop, and then our two fullbacks push forward. Obviously, Bogle and Verbal both the two furthest forward at one point, and it was just like, yeah, one of them he was offside, but it was a beautiful ball. I can't remember if it was Pascal or Rodon, and the way he just touched it down, I'm like, it's just so frustrating. He was offside because of how good we played. Getting back as well, he was decent. Obviously, I know we didn't really have to defend much, but it's also defending from the front. And we've noticed that with other players that we've seen, of like Joseph does it when he presses down a lot. James does it a lot. So even though we just let them have the ball at times, we press them into making mistakes, which we did do a lot in the first half. Obviously, Craig, you're a fan of that. Simeon, how do you feel about our pressing from the front? Do you enjoy that, or would you prefer dropping deep, letting them come at us, and then counter attacking?
I mean, it all depends on the opposition, really. I mean, Derby today looked very, very happy to sit in their low block, didn't they? So almost dropping deep and encouraging them to come out. If they didn't want to come out, they won't come out and play, and then you're kind of stuck. You did have to get in their faces a little bit and kind of harry them and hustle them to trying to make some mistakes. So just again, I think it's all about just adapting and having the sort of the game management skills to just do the right thing at the right time. And if the as it can be, you can get found out quite easily. The sort of the tactical nous across the league is so much higher than it used to be in the Championship in terms of if you only have one very rigid style of play, you can start to struggle with it if teams cotton on to how to play against you. I mean, even we saw it with like Leicester last season, for example, towards the end of the season, teams did work out what they were doing. They had the quality in the end to kind of push through and get to where they needed to get to. But it is a case of, I guess, just making sure that you have that, as I've said, that kind of that adaptability, the opportunity to play the opponent in a way. And that is maybe something you've been lacking a little bit in terms of the performances at home and away and why they are so different. It is something you do need to work on, but it is getting better, I do think.
Yeah, it's all do like the style of play. Obviously, we've touched on Verba there. Craig, was there any other players that stand out? Like I said, we're not going to be doing player ratings today, so we can just touch on individuals as we go. Anyone that stands out for you?
I think everybody had a good game today. I mean, I think Pro had a pretty good game, even though he didn't get on the score sheet. But I think early doors, maybe Solomon, he seemed to really want it today. He really took the game to them, and he almost scored one of his trademark goals. And I think he was too much. You can tell now he's getting to that point. His fitness is coming back. His sharpness is. You can tell he's a level above this league. It is. He's so good for us. But yeah, I think everybody played well. Tanaka, Rothwell in particular in
So
midfield,
good.
so good today. Rodon again with his goal and with the way he was commanding in defence. Dan James, as always, gives you 110%. Yeah, it's like Simeon said earlier that I think those four, any of those wingers, they walk into any any championship team, and I think you ask any championship team if they would like any of them players, they would pick they probably would pick any of our midfield.
Yeah, obviously Rothwell is a bit of a underrated player to say the least. I mean, I thought he was absolutely excellent. I'm not going to divulge in so many stats. I know how much I love a good stat on this, but corners, he is the man for corners at the moment, and he got an assist. He could have potentially had another one if Rodon knew how to get it on target. It was the easier chance, and he missed it. He was wide open, missed it. You think, here we go, and we get another corner. Not long afterwards, it goes straight to him in the back of the net. You're like, finally, which was a harder chance. but let's say it's his first ever goal in England, so it just shows that he's been dying out because the last few weeks he's been getting his head onto it and potentially could have scored a few more. It is a toss up between them two who my man of the match is. Simeon, who do you have as the man of the match today?
It was Joe Rothwell for me. I think he's brilliant. He's so understated. He's so underrated. I know Tanaka gets a lot of headlines for you guys at the moment. You all absolutely love him, and rightly so. We got absolute pelters for not putting him in our team of the season so far.
Yeah,
I think that's how we started chatting, wasn't it, on TikTok in the first place for
yeah,
something
it
like
was.
that. I was me and David Prutton who did it were called criminals on more than one occasion for leaving it out there. But yeah, no, he was. He's brilliant, and again, he's what a find he's been for this league. But for me, Rothwell, he's so under kind of stated, and his chance create. I see this weird argument on socials a lot, and it's always, oh, he creates a load of chances, and then someone else will be like, oh yeah, but they're all from corners, and then but having a good corner taker is invaluable in any league.
Yeah,
In any, I mean, look at Arsenal at the moment. They're trying to win they're trying to win the Premier League through corners. Like it's like,
yeah.
and it's just so what if he's creating chances through corners, and that's brilliant. It's still a chance. It's still a goal if it leads to a goal, and it's such a and his set piece delivery is brilliant. But it's just his overall calmness and play, and he is going to be a hard player to leave out. But again, it's just not something you really have to worry about. It's just another option, another really good option you have, and another option you'll need in the run in. Because I mean, last season you probably didn't have those options, and you ended up running out of steam. However way you want to look at however your last season ended, I'm sure most of you don't want to think about it too much. Uh, but in terms of it will help you in that over the course to have those options, those players who can come in, because you never know when you might have a few suspensions, a few injuries, and you need these players to be able to come in and out and be in that system and work the way they are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
his experience brings a lot to us. The experience that he's got, especially like in this league and the top flight football experience that he's got. But it's the way that he just, apart from his set pieces, the way that he just gets the ball and drives forward. It catches team. That creates a lot for us because he catches teams off guard that normally, if you've got Ampadu and Gruev there, they sit back and Ampadu drives forward sometimes, but not like Rothwell. He's got that burst of pace that you don't realise he's got.
if you touch on that with the chance creation, so he made 16 passes into final third. So I'm going to do a little bit of stats now. 6 defensive actions, 5 ball recoveries, 4 dual ones, but he also made 3 out of 3 accurate long passes, 3 chances created. Now, whether or not that's just from corners or not, he's still creating chances. He's also made 3 interceptions as well, so he was defending as well as getting forward. And I think this was his statement game. He had to make this statement with Ampadu back on the bench because he probably knew deep down that if he didn't perform, he was one that was going to get dropped out of them too. Now, we had this discussion last game whether or not we drop Aronson and put in Rothwell as number 10, or they've been talks about Tanaka training there as well in the week. We could potentially go to to a 3 with Ampadu dropping, and then with Tanaka and Rothwell going forward with the wing backs like we've been doing anyway. Craig, are you still up for that idea or not? Because I know you're say on Aronson, and I do want to ask you about Aronson's game today, mate.
Hmm. Well, I mean, for me, I don't want to totally. I know I've seen online people like saying, "No, we could play a three midfield 4-3-3," and I'm like, you don't change the whole system. Like, there's no need to change the
Yeah.
whole system. We're fine as we're playing. But I do still think that Rothwell will give you more in that number 10 role than what Aronson will, when it comes to the experience, the final decisions. Because what lets Aronson down, in my opinion, is his final decision and in his decision making. Um, and Rothwell used to do that at Blackburn. He used to play that more forward role, so I think he could do it.
Yeah, I think like I said, Aronson performance, you either love him or you don't. He is a lot like Marmite. Simeon, do you want your say on Aronson or not? Because obviously I know your role and stuff. And what would you think
I
about his
mean,
performance
he can
today?
frustrate sometimes. I mean, he has those moments where you just think, that time where he got the ball in the box and he kind of turned, and you just want him to kind of, for him, obviously not me. I'm not a Leeds fan. I'm no bias whatsoever, but just in terms of um, yeah, you think, okay, now just kind of bend it away bottom corner, and he just ends up kind of hitting it and giving the keeper a relatively easy save to make. But I mean, Farker likes him. He works his socks off. He is good in that role, and I think you do lose something by not having him there. To get back onto what you were saying before about kind of what should we do with the system when all these players are back. I mean, it's given me kind of PTSD of England in the summer when you were let's shoe or let's rather than dropping some players and playing our system, let's shoot them all into one thing and get all our best players. It just doesn't work like that. You've got to some players have to be kind of sacrificed, and we've got 5 subs in the championship now. It's a squad game, and it doesn't have to be the same kind of focus on the 11 and who the kind of players are. I mean, Ampadu, we know, can kind of play in a variety of positions, and as I think I touched upon before, you will need all these players at some point through the season. So I just don't think it's a huge issue for me personally. I would stick with Rothwell for now, and I'd potentially bring. I mean, Ampadu, I still think needs to be kind of eased back in a little bit because he is back very early. So, but I mean, I couldn't make a call of what to do. But in terms of, for me now, I'd go into the midweek game with the same team from today, or at least the same kind of core at the very least that's going to kind of push forward.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because obviously in transition when we got the ball, our fullbacks, wing backs, whichever, push forward, and then one of the centre mids does drop back, and then the other one pushes forward a lot. So we've seen that with Tanaka, but they're not just always sitting back. Sometimes we've got both of them right up top near Aronson anyway. I mean, touching on Aronson, he still had 3 shots. His shot led to the corner, which led to our goal anyway, and it was a beautiful little turn. But there was a chance in the second half. I think it was Aronson, but for some reason they said Perot. He had the time in the world just to find the bottom corner or have a shot, and he just literally held on to the ball for an eternity and then laid it off to James, and he was just blocked. And it was just that's the frustrating time for me is when he got too much time on the ball. And yes, he didn't lose the ball as much as he normally does. Normally, we're talking that he's dispossessed 6 to 8 times a game, and he was only dispossessed once today. He's having he had more shots today, and dribbling and tackling from the front and stuff. But he can be frustrating, can't he, Craig?
Yeah, very, very frustrating. But it's like I said, the frustrating part for me is not the hard work that he puts in, and not the pressing and everything else. It's that final decision, that decision making, and that will come in time. It will come with experience. But like you said, that chance, I know which one you're talking about because I was shouting at him to just put his foot through it. But it's like if you don't do it at the right time, you get closed down. That chance is gone then, and it's just because from playing in those positions, it's like I know as soon as you get the ball, you've got that. You see a gap, you go for it, but he waits too long, and that's what frustrates me. And like Simeon said, it's not a big issue, but I think he does need a rest at some point because he can't keep going like he does every single game for 46 games. That's a lot. But we have got
Sure,
quality players. We have got quality players that can interchange. So we like the squad will get used over the season, and yeah.
Yeah, Duracell battery, obviously, but then you look at the difference between Solomon when he closes down the player and gets the ball, he drives forward and shoots. Even though one of his shots got blocked, one then went wide, which was unlucky. Solomon showing the effort, and then Ramazani when he came on, he got the ball, lost it, got the ball, and then just dribbled straight forward and shot. And then there was another time when he hit Pirro in the back or something. But even though, like I said, we were 2-0 down, we were 2-0 up, sorry, we never stopped looking for extra goals, which has always been, like I said at the beginning, a talking point with Leeds fans that we never push for more goals. We never put the sword to a team and winning 4-5-0. But it's the championship. I'm going to say it's same quote every week. Anybody can beat anybody. You just got to beat what's in front of you. Take your chances. There are going to be games when you only win 1-0 scrappy, or you can convincingly win 1-0, but the other keeper have an absolute blinder. And it's frustrating because from Bayer's point of view, you want your team to be winning 5-6-0, but it doesn't matter if you win 5-6-0 or 1-0. A win's a win. So I don't know. Substitutes. How do you feel on the subs today, Simeon? Like, because we always moan with how late they come on, and they're not early subs.
Yeah, I have seen that one with Fark. He's not always the most reactive manager, and I know that can frustrate fans, and understandably so. It's I think today was more just a case of freshening things up rather than any kind of particular tactical. It wasn't like a need to win the game. It was, again, if we were here last week after Blackburn, we'd be having a very different conversation about substitutions now, I'd imagine. Whereas today was very much just about giving some other players some minutes, freshening things up, and having a sort of a bit more of a go in the last kind of quarter of the game. So I don't think, I mean, Leeds fans will have obviously different views of this, but for me, substitute, it wasn't a huge talking point today, really, because I mean, by the time the subs were being made, the game was won, and it'll be interesting to see if he does what changes he does make for midweek in terms of who does and doesn't, kind of, if like Donto comes back in, that kind of thing, or he does rest Aronson, or. But yeah, in terms of today, I think the subs were pretty much fine for the kind of the position the game was in, to be honest. It was, let's have another run at it for 20 minutes or so. He did carry on creating chances. I think Derby got to the point where they're just like, let's keep it to 2 if we can, visit. We put out videos all the time, and I think the average Derby prediction was 5-0 defeat today. So I think they were kind of pretty content to just lose 2-0 and crack on with it, to be honest. So it was kind of almost a null and void game by that point. I know a fan will never see it that way because you're always fearing the worst, but from a perspective of a neutral observer, it was very much game over by the time the second one went in, really.
Yes, touching on Derby then, obviously you're neutral here. Apart from the keeper, who did have a pretty decent game, were you impressed or were you like disappointed by any of their players? Obviously, we had a Derby fan on for a preview, and they was just saying as long as it's 2-0 to Leeds, any more than that, like if it was 2-0, you'd be comfortable with. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite hard to say disappointed by their players, or did anyone stand out like defensively for them?
Not really, to be honest. I feel like that, as I said, the keeper played well, but other than that, it wasn't like they had to be spectacular defensively to kind of, it was a lot of saves from their keeper, and it wasn't, whilst Leeds created chance, it wasn't like you kind of got to the end of the game and you're like, cool, that could have been 8-0. It was kind of a very kind of comfortable, controlled, maybe could have had one or two more, but it didn't feel like an absolute chance, like constant. It did kind of fritter away a little bit in that regard. But I mean, I think Derby came to do what they planned to do, which was not get absolutely hammered. Which is, I mean, the problem thing is with Derby is it's so easy to forget that they are a newly promoted team because it feels like they've kind of just been around in the challenge. You forget that they weren't there for 2 years because they've just been around for so long there. And they do have to they've got a manager who will, to the occasional frustration of Derby fans, approach games like this like they are a newly promoted team when they do want to obviously go toe to toe with Leeds and clubs of that stature. But it's just not realistic for where they are at the moment and where their team is at the moment. They've got a squad that anything above kind of the dotted line is a good finish, I think, for them this season, to be honest, and they should be pretty happy with it. But that doesn't mean their fans will, because they'll always want more from it. But for me, as a newly promoted team, you can't turn up at Ellen Road, especially with the home form you guys have been in this season, and really expect much from the game, to be honest.
Yeah, the manager was full of praise after the. I haven't got the quote for quote, but he was just saying how well we played and we were pushing them backwards, side to side passing and stuff like that. So he kind of knew that they weren't going to win and stuff like that. So I think he just took it on the chin kind of thing and move on to the next game. Craig, did anyone of their players stand out to you in terms that you thought, okay, that person had a good game or not?
No, not like I said. It's I think a game's won with the way like Bielsa used to play. It was man for man. So you won a game by winning your duel with the player that you were up against. And I don't think any Derby player today could say that they won a duel against any Leeds player that they were up against. So it's I know they don't play man to man, but it's in that respect the midfield didn't overpower our midfield. The defense didn't overpower our forwards. There were no dominance anywhere on the pitch. I think, like I say, it was damage control basically today, and just try and keep it as low as possible.
Yeah, I'd probably say Nat Phillips stood out. Obviously, I was praising him before the game. I'm a fan of him. I think he's a decent player, but obviously, one player doesn't make a difference in a team like that. Before we end it, Craig, is there anywhere that any other positives from Leeds that you saw today? Any difference to usual?
No, I think I think Leeds are just improving bit by bit, and the players that are coming back. I mean, the big improvements. Ampadu's back on the bench, which we thought he'd be out a lot longer. And it's frightening to think that that's the kind of player, the caliber of player that's yet to come back into the team.
Yeah. Simeon, before we leave it, what's your thoughts on Leeds overall so far this season, and your expectations and your feelings towards them for the end of the season?
My feeling is it will be you, Burnley, Sheffield United competing for top two. My personal perspective, I think Middlesbrough look good at the moment, but they've shown in games like Blackburn last week that they can come unstuck in various situations, and I don't think they have good options, but I don't think they quite have the depth that you guys have, that Sheffield United have, and that Burnley have, and I think that does make the difference once we get into the real thick of the season. I feel who to call out of the three of you who the two will be, I couldn't really say. I think obviously the main thing for you is keep winning at home, which doesn't really seem to be a problem. But again, the problem is the performances on the road, and that is again where things could get a little bit messy if you don't really find a way to resolve that. Because if you want to, the top two can start to get away from teams quite easily. We've seen it in previous seasons, like Burnley are a great example from a couple of years ago, where they just go on these runs of 7-8 wins in a row and they're just away from everyone else. And if you're drawing or losing every other game because you can't win those games on the road, then you will end up getting into a situation where you are playing massive catch up in the second part of the season, and then that will really catch up with you towards the end. And I feel like it feels like I'm just explaining Leeds' last season again, because it is kind of what happened, isn't
I
it?
was
But
about
it
to
is,
say that.
yeah, but it is kind of it is a cliche, but it is true, because that is what happens, and you can go on these runs, but if you're putting in that exertion to win those games in those sort of patches, then the energy will run out at some point, because you just can't keep it up forever. So it's just, that would be my concern, is that if you can't resolve those issues, then those two teams, if they just have that consistency, really, especially in the next couple of months, that they could get away from you, then it's so hard to make up those gaps and close them and then keep them closed.
Yeah. I think I was reading a stat though, because the other day, well, not reading, heard a stat from Johnny Cooper that it's not as bad as we think the away form, because overall the championship, I think overall the championship has lost about, I think it's about nearly almost 10% less away wins than there were last season. It's declined a lot. So like a lot of teams got better home form, worse away form across the championship. So it's not just Leeds. So it like take some comfort in that it's, if we pick that form up, which hopefully with Farker's usual plan of second half of season, he starts picking up more points, then we'll be up there, I think.
Yeah, it's the draws that are the concerning bit for me. Like, the losses here and there we can take. It's the draws that we should potentially be winning. So, the one that really springs to mind is Portsmouth, first game of the season, 3-3. We had a chance to go 4-3 up. We shouldn't have even been in that situation anyway. That's the frustrating part, is when we go to teams and draw,
Mm.
like Burnley when they beat us 1-0. I can take that because it was a slip, it's a mistake. These things do happen. Although, to be fair, I'd rather be beating Burnley than Portsmouth. Portsmouth, due to the fact of where they are in the league. And yes, Portsmouth got a decent result today, but it's still a very tough league to get out of. And you can only beat what's in front of you. It's just annoying when we do lose these games.
I think we'll win more
It
than
is
we
what
lose.
it is. Well, we'll leave that there. Simeon, is there anything that you'd like to add on Leeds or the championship as a whole?
No, it's just don't get promoted, because it's a pleasure covering you.
Well, we'd get to pay you next season if we do get promoted, so
Very
we can
true.
always do this again next season.
Yeah, very
Thank you for
true.
joining us. Simeon, it's been an
Apologies for
absolute...
stealing your striker as well. I'm genuinely very
That's all
sorry
right.
about that.
So it's doing quite well for you, so it's fine. We'll let you off. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on today, mate. Craig, as always, thank you for joining. And we'll leave it there. Don't forget, we are sponsored by Prize Pot. Signed Lucas Radeby top at the moment. Head over to the website. Linktree will be in the description, where you can click and enter the raffle to win it. Thank you all for listening, guys. Thank you both for joining.
See you later.
Cheers.